Let me ask you something. Have you ever called a function before you defined it, and it still worked? Or logged a variable that somehow exists even though you never declared it at the top? Yeah, that's not luck. That's something called hoisting. And trust me, JavaScript has some weird rules behind it. Let's make hoisting so simple that you'll never get confused by it again. So, what is hoisting? Hoisting is a behavior in JavaScript where variable and function declarations are moved to the top of their scope during the compilation phase. Let's see hoisting in action in this example. Here in the first line, we define the user ID variable using var. As this variable is declared in the global scope, we can easily access it inside the log user data function. As a result, user ID logs to the console as 1, and the if block runs successfully because user ID is a truthy value. But things change for username and user age. Here we try to log them before assigning values to them. As a result, both of them log to the console as undefined. Why? Because in JavaScript, variables declared with var are hoisted. This means the declaration of username and user age is moved to the top of the function, but the assignment stays in place. So when the console.log runs, the variables already exist, but they don't have values yet. That's why we get undefined. Now let's try the same thing, but with const instead of var. But this time, instead of getting undefined, JavaScript throws a reference error like this. So what changed? Just like var, let and const are also hoisted, but there's a twist. They're hoisted to the top of their scope, but they don't get initialized right away. This special zone between the hoisting and the actual line where the variable is defined is called the temporal dead zone. While a variable is in the temporal dead zone, you can't access it at all, not even as undefined. So when the console.log tries to access username, it crashes immediately because username is still in the dead zone. So far, we've talked about variables. But what about functions? Let's check this out. Even though we're calling the function before it's defined, it still works. No errors, no undefined, just a friendly wave from JavaScript. Why? Because function declarations are fully hoisted. So behind the scenes, it's like this function was already waiting for us, ready to be called anytime inside the same scope. Now let's try the same thing, but this time with either a function expression or an arrow function. We call them before they're defined, and the result is reference error. Why? Because under the hood, both are just variables, usually defined with const. And as we saw earlier, const variables are not hoisted with their value. They live in the temporal dead zone until JavaScript reaches their definition. To sum up, in this table we see a side-by-side comparison of how different variables and functions behave when it comes to hoisting, initialization, and the temporal dead zone. Keep this in mind when writing your code. It can save you from some confusing bugs. That's it for today's video. If this helped you finally understand hoisting, consider giving it a like and maybe even subscribing for more JavaScript breakdowns like this. Thanks for watching, and keep coding smart.